I never believed in repressed memories until the night they all came flooding back at once. It was like someone had ripped the blindfold from my eyes, and what I saw on the other side made me wish I was blind again. My name is Daniel. I'm 41 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed my younger brother Marcus had died of pneumonia when I was 13. That was the version my parents told me, the version I repeated when anyone asked if I had siblings. But 3 weeks ago, something changed. I was organizing the basement of my mother's house after she was admitted to a nursing home. Senile dementia, the doctors said. She didn't recognize me anymore. She spent her days staring at the wall, mumbling things that made no sense. Except now, I know it wasn't nonsense.
At the bottom of a dusty box, I found a photograph. It was folded in half, hidden inside an unmarked envelope. When I opened it, I felt a chill pierce through my chest. It was a photo of our old house. That house. The house where we lived before we moved abruptly to the city, without explanation, without goodbyes. I was 13. Marcus was 9. In the photo, there was something in Marcus's bedroom window. A shadow. Or maybe a person. It was hard to tell. But what made me choke was what was written on the back of the photo, in my mother's trembling handwriting. He's still there. God forgive me. He's still there. That night, I couldn't sleep. Memories began returning, like shards of glass, cutting their way through the fog that had covered my mind for almost 30 years. I remembered the day my parents told me Marcus was sick. I remembered how they locked his bedroom door. I remembered the sounds that came from behind that door. As a child, I thought they were the groans of a sick boy in pain. But now, hearing them echo in my adult mind, I recognized what they really were.
They weren't groans of pain. They were groans of hunger. I spent the next week trying to find records, death certificates, medical attestations, anything that would prove the story my parents had told me about Marcus's death. There was nothing. No hospital records, no death certificate, no attestation. It was as if Marcus had simply ceased to exist on paper, but continued existing somewhere between reality and oblivion. I tried talking to my father, but he died 8 years ago. Massive heart attack. I remember the funeral. I remember how my mother didn't shed a single tear. She just stood there, staring at the coffin, and whispered something I couldn't quite hear at the time. Now I remember what she said. One less to keep the secret. The next day, I did something I swore I'd never do. I went back to that town. I drove for 4 hours through empty roads until I reached the place where I grew up. The house was still there, abandoned, with boards nailed over the windows and a yard overrun with weeds. A condemned property sign hung crooked on the gate. I sat in the car for almost an hour, just staring. Part of me wanted to leave. Part of me knew that if I entered that house, I would never be the same again. But the photo was on the passenger seat, and my mother's words echoed in my head. He's still there. The front door gave way easily when I pushed. The wood was rotten, devoured by time and neglect. The smell that came from inside was indescribable, a mixture of mold, decay, and something else. Something alive. Something waiting. I entered. The house was exactly as I remembered it, only worse. Frozen in time, but rotting. The furniture was still there, covered in dust and cobwebs. Family photos still hung crooked on the walls. Our smiling faces staring at me through the darkness. At the top of the stairs, Marcus's bedroom door was closed, and underneath it, there was light. I stood at the bottom of those stairs for what felt like an eternity. The light underneath Marcus's door flickered, not like a candle, Not like a lamp left on for decades. It pulsed, like breathing, like something alive was generating it from within. My hand gripped the railing, and I felt how loose it was, rotted through. One wrong step, and I'd fall right through these stairs. Maybe that would be better. Maybe breaking my leg would give me an excuse to leave and never come back. But I climbed anyway. Each step groaned under my weight. The sound echoed through the empty house like a scream. I kept my eyes on that door, on that pulsing light. When I reached the top, I noticed something I hadn't seen from below. There were scratches on the door, deep gouges in the wood, running vertically from top to bottom, like someone had been trying to claw their way out, or trying to claw their way in. I reached for the doorknob. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely grip it. The metal was ice cold, colder than it should have been, colder than anything I'd ever touched. "Marcus?" I whispered. The light underneath the door stopped pulsing. Everything went completely still, completely silent. Even the sound of my own breathing seemed to vanish into the oppressive quiet. And then I heard it. A voice. Small, young, familiar. "Danny? Is that you?" It was Marcus's voice, exactly as I remembered it. The same voice that used to call me to come play video games with him. The same voice that used to laugh at my terrible jokes. The same voice I heard in my dreams sometimes, before I forgot he ever existed. "Marcus?" I said again, louder this time. "I've been waiting so long, Danny. So long. Why did you leave me here?" My throat tightened. Tears burned in my eyes. I didn't know. I didn't remember. What happened to you?" There was a long pause. "Open the door," he said. "Please, I want to see you. I've missed you so much." Something in my gut told me not to open that door. Some primal instinct, some animal part of my brain that knew better. But the rational part of my mind, the part that remembered playing catch with Marcus in the backyard, the part that remembered reading him bedtime stories when our parents were fighting, that part was screaming at me to open it. My brother was in there. My brother needed me. I turned the knob. The door swung open slowly, creaking on rusted hinges. The room was exactly as I remembered it. The same race car bed, the same posters on the walls, the same toy chest in the corner. But everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, untouched for decades. Except for one thing. In the center of the room, sitting on the floor with his back to me, was Marcus. He looked exactly like he did the last time I saw him, 9 years old, brown hair, small frame, wearing the same blue pajamas he'd been wearing that last night. "Marcus!" I breathed. He didn't turn around. "Do you remember the last night, Danny?" he asked. His voice was quiet, distant. "Do you remember what really happened?" And suddenly, I did. The memories came crashing back with brutal clarity, and I stumbled backward, catching myself on the doorframe. I remembered that night, the night before we moved away. I remembered my parents waking me up in the middle of the night, their faces pale with terror. I remembered them dragging me to the car, telling me not to look back, not to ask questions. But I had looked back. I'd looked back and seen Marcus standing in his bedroom window, his small hand pressed against the glass. Only it wasn't Marcus anymore. "You remember now, don't you?" the thing on the floor said. It still hadn't turned around. "You remember what came into the house that night, what found me first." "What are you?" I whispered. The figure began to stand, slowly, unnaturally. Its joints bent at wrong angles as it rose, like a puppet being pulled up by invisible strings. "It's what's left." And then it turned around.
The face that looked at me was Marcus's face, but wrong, so terribly wrong. The features were all there, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, but they didn't move right. They shifted and slid across the surface like they were painted on water. The eyes were too wide, unblinking, and completely black. When it smiled, I saw that it had too many teeth.
"Mom and Dad tried to lock it in," the thing said in Marcus's voice. "They thought if they kept the door closed, kept me in here, it wouldn't spread. They were going to come back. They promised. They said they'd find a way to help me." It took a step closer. "But they never came back, Danny. Nobody did. Just me, alone, in the dark, for 28 years. I tried to back away, but my legs wouldn't move. The thing wearing Marcus's face tilted its head at an impossible angle, studying me with those bottomless black eyes. When it spoke, I could see that its mouth didn't quite sync with the words, like watching a badly dubbed movie. "Do you know what it's like to be forgotten, Danny? To exist in a space between living and dying, waiting for someone to remember you existed at all?"
I'm sorry, I choked out. The words felt pathetic, meaningless. I didn't know. They made me forget. I don't know how, but they did. The thing that was Marcus laughed. It was a horrible sound, like wind whistling through a broken window, with something wet underneath. They didn't make you forget. You chose to. It was easier, wasn't it? Easier to believe the lie than to remember what you saw. Easier to move on, make new friends, live your life, while I stayed here, alone. It moved closer. I could smell it now. The scent of decay mixed with something chemical, something preserved. But I'm not angry anymore, Danny. I've had a long time to think, to understand, and now you're here. Now you finally came back.
My hand found the doorframe behind me. I needed to run. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from that shifting, melting face. "What do you want from me?" I asked. The thing smiled wider. More teeth appeared in that mouth, crowding together, overlapping. "I want you to understand. I want you to see what I see. I want you to remember everything." It raised one hand toward me. The fingers were too long, with too many joints. "Let me show you." When its fingers touched my forehead, the world exploded. Suddenly, I was 13 again, standing in this very hallway. It was nighttime. I heard my parents screaming downstairs. I heard Marcus crying in his room. I heard something else, something moving through the walls. I watched myself run to Marcus's door and throw it open. Marcus was on his bed, curled up in a ball, sobbing. But there was something else in the room with him, something tall and thin that seemed to be made of shadow and angles that didn't make sense. It was hunched over my brother, and I could see it doing something to him, pulling something out of him, replacing it with something else. "Get away from him!" my 13-year-old self screamed.
The thing turned to look at me. It had no face, just a blank expanse of darkness where a face should be. I watched my younger self stumble backward in horror. I watched my parents appear behind me, my father holding a baseball bat with shaking hands, my mother pulling me away from the door. "Don't look at it," she was saying over and over. "Don't look at it, Daniel. Close your eyes. Close your eyes." But I had looked. I'd seen the thing finish whatever it was doing to Marcus. I'd seen it step back and fade into the corner of the room like smoke dissipating. And I'd seen Marcus stand up from the bed. He looked normal at first, but when he turned toward us, his movements were all wrong, jerky,
mechanical. "Mom," he'd said. "Dad, something's wrong. I feel different."
My father had slammed the door shut and locked it. Marcus had started screaming, pounding on the door, begging to be let out. But my father just kept pushing me down the hallway toward the stairs while my mother sobbed behind us. "We have to leave," my father kept saying. "We have to leave right now. We can't let it spread to us." "What about Marcus?" I'd screamed. "We can't leave him." But my mother just looked at me with hollow, terrified eyes. "That's not Marcus anymore."
The memory released me, and I fell to my knees, gasping. The thing stood over me, watching with those black eyes. "Now you remember," it said. "Now you know what your parents did. They left me here to rot, to starve, to slowly become less and less human with every passing day." I looked up at it, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "Marcus, I'm so sorry." "I'm not Marcus," it said simply. "Not anymore. Marcus died slowly over the years, alone in this room. What I am now is what's left after Marcus was gone. The thing that took his place grew and fed on his memories, his pain, his loneliness. I am the aftermath."
It crouched down to my level, bringing that awful face close to mine. "But you can help me, Danny. You can finally set me free." "How?" I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know the answer. The thing's smile widened impossibly far, splitting its face nearly in half. "Let me in," it whispered. "Let me wear you for a while. Let me see the world through your eyes. Let me feel what it's like to be alive again, even if just for a moment. And then, when I'm done, I'll let you go. I promise." I knew it was lying. I knew that if I let this thing inside me, I would end up just like Marcus. Trapped, forgotten, replaced by something that wore my face, but it wasn't me anymore. But looking into those eyes, I saw something that made me hesitate. I saw pain. Real, genuine pain. The pain of a little boy who was abandoned by everyone who was supposed to love him, who died slowly in the dark, calling for help that never came. And I realized something terrible. Maybe I deserved this. Maybe this was payment for forgetting, for moving on, for living my life while my brother was trapped here in this nightmare. The thing reached toward me again. "It won't hurt," it said softly. "I'll be gentle. I'll make it quick." My hand moved toward its outstretched fingers. Our fingertips were inches apart. And then I heard my mother's voice, not from the thing in front of me, from downstairs, weak, fragile, real. "Daniel, are you in here?"
I froze. The thing froze too, its black eyes narrowing. "Mom?" I called out, my voice cracking. "Don't listen," the thing hissed. "It's trying to trick you, trying to save you. But there's no saving you now, Danny. You came back. You opened the door. You remembered." But I could hear footsteps on the stairs, slow, shuffling footsteps. My mother appeared in the doorway, leaning heavily on a walker. She looked so much older than when I'd last seen her, so much more fragile. Her eyes weren't vacant anymore. They were sharp, clear, focused. "Step away from him," she said to the thing.
The creature wearing Marcus's face turned to look at her. It stood slowly, rising to its full height. It was taller than I remembered, taller than any human should be. "You," it said, and for the first time, I heard real emotion in its voice. Rage. pure, burning rage. You left me here. You locked me away like I was nothing, like I was already dead. My mother's face crumpled with pain, but she didn't look away. I know, she whispered. God help me, I know what we did. I've lived with it every single day since. It destroyed your father. It destroyed our family. It destroyed me.
Then why didn't you come back? The thing screamed. Why didn't you help me? My mother's hands tightened on the walker. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Because we couldn't. That thing that took you, Marcus, it feeds on connection, on love, on memory. If we had come back, if we had tried to help you, it would have spread to us, to Daniel. It would have consumed our entire family. She looked at me then, and I saw tears streaming down her weathered face. So we did the only thing we could. We ran. We made Daniel forget. We let you go.
The thing laughed, that horrible wet sound echoing through the room. Let me go. You left me to become this. You turned me into a monster. You were already gone, my mother said quietly. My son died the moment that thing touched him. What's standing here now is just an echo, a shadow wearing his face. The creature lunged toward her, but my mother didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled something from her pocket. A photograph. The same photograph I'd found in her basement. I kept this, she said, holding it up. I kept it as a reminder of what we lost, what we sacrificed, and as a warning.
She looked at the thing with Marcus's face. You can't leave this house, she said. That's the rule, isn't it? That's why you needed Daniel to come back. You needed him to invite you out, to give you permission to leave. The thing's face contorted with fury. Its features melted and shifted, becoming less and less human with each passing second. He was going to let me in. He was going to save me. No, my mother said firmly. He was going to sacrifice himself out of guilt, but I won't let that happen. I already lost one son. I won't lose another. She turned to me, her eyes pleading.
Daniel, run! Run now! And this time, don't look back. Don't ever come back here. Do you understand me? The thing shrieked and lunged at my mother. I saw her stumble backward, saw her fall. But I also saw something else. I saw her smile. Like this was what she'd been waiting for. Like she'd known all along how this would end. Run! She screamed one last time, and I did. I ran down those stairs, through that rotting house, out the door and into the sunlight. I ran to my car and I drove away. And I didn't stop driving until I was 3 states away.
I never went back. That was 3 weeks ago. The police called me 2 days later. They found my mother's body in the house. Natural causes, they said. Her heart just gave out. Strange that she'd managed to drive all that way in her condition, they said. Strange that she'd gone to that old condemned house. I didn't correct them. I didn't tell them what really happened. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night.
Before I ran, in that split second before I turned away, I saw something. I saw the thing grab my mother. I saw it pull her close, just like it had pulled Marcus all those years ago. And I saw my mother whisper something in its ear. I don't know what she said, but whatever it was made the creature stop, made it freeze completely, like she'd spoken some terrible secret that changed everything. Sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about going back, about finding out what happened, about learning what my mother said that stopped that thing in its tracks. But then I remember her last words to me. Don't ever come back.
And I remember the smile on her face as she fell, Like she finally found a way to make things right. Like she'd finally found a way to save me, even if it cost her everything. The house burned down a week ago. Electrical fire, they said. Nothing could be saved. The whole structure collapsed into ash and rubble. I should feel relieved, but every night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., I wake up to the sound of something moving through the walls of my apartment. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear a voice calling my name. Two voices, actually. One sounds like Marcus.
The other sounds like Mom, and they're both asking me to let them in. I haven't opened the door yet, but they're getting louder, and I'm getting so tired, so very tired.